I am, or was, a hill climber, driving a very fast racing car over a very short distance of 1,100 yards or something, and I wanted to do something a little bit longer. So we chose the London to Sydney Marathon. And when we were discussing what sort of car we would use, I think I was probably thinking in terms of a Jaguar or something quite powerful. And Trevor said, well, what about a Morris Minor? And when we pulled up in the Morris Minor, they said, what? You're doing the London to Sydney in that? And I must admit, I felt a bit embarrassed, really. And I did hear a couple of comments about how we wouldn't manage to get there, what a waste of an entry. But of course, we proved them all wrong.
Next up was a 2006 Carrera Sudamericana, which Joy and Trevor competed on in a Jeep Cherokee. And sadly, that didn't go too well.
Well, I wanted to do the Carrera Sudamericana because it was a Nick Britton event, and my first long-distance rally was the London to Sydney, and I got hooked on long-distance rallying. But 5 days into the rally, I had a phone call from my mother to say my father was ill, and I was stranded a couple of days later. And fortunately, someone had lent me a satellite phone, and I phoned my mother. And my father had just died. So I don't really have fond memories of the Carrera Sudamericana.
But it wasn't all bad, and whenever you saw Joy and Trevor together, it was obviously Trevor who would be working on the car, while Joy was busy writing up her newspaper column or updating her blog. It was clear that the long-distance bug had taken over both Trevor and Joy by now, and so their next big adventure was the 2008 Karma Enduro, in which everybody drove identical Hindustan Ambassadors.
I didn't drive. I actually lost a bit of interest before because during the time of entering and the time of leaving, we decided we would drive the Oldsmobile across America the following year. And so what we then decided was, because Trevor was so involved with rebuilding the Oldsmobile, that there wasn't a lot of time to make my pedal adaptations for the Ambassador. So we decided we'd swap roles. I'd be the navigator and he'd be the driver. So yeah, that was quite good fun. It was really good fun. I didn't actually think I'd enjoy it, but it was one of the most enjoyable rallies I've actually ever done.
And then with plans for the coast-to-coast adventure well underway, life took a cruel twist.
Trevor had almost finished the car, apart from some cosmetics. And we went on a few short test runs. But then Trevor was starting to get quite ill, and eventually he was diagnosed with cancer. And he was in hospital for a long time. He never gave up. And I didn't either, because you hear about miracles happening. But it was awful seeing him suffering so much. Trevor had always wanted to get married. And I don't know why, but I wasn't that keen on getting married, really. It didn't feel that important to me. But about 3 months before he died, he asked me. And he was actually in the Macmillan unit. And I accepted. I wanted to marry him then. And I said, well, you'll have to ask my mother. So I took my mother down to visit him that evening. And he asked her. And she was rather overwhelmed and obviously was very happy. And the nurses at the Macmillan Centre had set up the day room for us for the wedding ceremony. And we had it in the Macmillan unit. And There was an old lady in the room opposite Trevor's, and Trevor went down to where the ceremony was going to take place, and I waited in the room. And as I was walking out, the old lady said to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to get married." And she said, "And where are you going for your honeymoon?" I said, "We're not having a honeymoon. We've had a honeymoon for the last 25 years. But he wanted to come home, and we set up his bed in the lounge room overlooking the garden. So he came home for the last 6 days of his life. And sadly, he passed away. And I didn't think I would do the trip to America on my own. And then eventually I met new people, and one becomes a bit stronger, and I decided I had to do it, really, just to show that his rebuild was pretty good. And I hope that we prove that as well.